I used to be good about it.
Dude, I've managed pretty good. I didn't.
Yeah.
It's been a thing I actually like doing of all the social medias.
Yeah.
I enjoy getting to hold these conversations and stuff like that, especially athletes and performance people from wildly different backgrounds from me.
Sure.
And then with cycling, like I like cycling and
Right.
have for a long time. So at least I'm a hair educated on it.
Cool. Yeah.
It's not just a meathead jumping in and and being very confused about basic cycling things.
Right. Yeah. I've had a lot of those.
So man, I was, looking at everything and I realized that you and I are just about the same height, except I've got 100 pounds on you, which is really, really odd.
Yeah.
Man, I just, I like the books. I have checked out and read through the Cycling on $10 a Day.
Thanks.
That would be I just couldn't help but think about trying to write the equivalent of that, but for being a meathead.
Yeah.
And that would be tricky on the food portion. So I guess like first kind of questions, man, is when you're competing at that level, especially within the tour, like how much are you tracking body weight and food and everything?
I mean, you weigh yourself. I would just weigh myself every day, just like staying on top of it. Essentially, like pro cycling is your job is a power to weight ratio. So that's you're on it all the time. Pretty much like, I don't know. I never had like wild weight swings. I would just kind of like stay between 148 and 152 when I was racing, and it was no problem. Some guys would like put on more in the off season, have to work out. I always hated losing weight, so I would never really let myself lose weight. I would just like be reasonably careful all the time.
Yeah, I didn't know if like in the off season, just to help with recovery and training loads, if you would add, a little bit extra body weight to kind of cushion it.
Yeah, I would probably add 4 to 5 pounds.
Yeah, right.
Like I would do like a month of gym work. Like every October I would like not ride and hit the gym, and then it would just fall off immediately.
Now, what would like gym workouts look like?
Core, lower body, like back, shoulders kind of stuff, just whatever to January to March, I would feel stable on the bike courtesy of that gym work. And then, you turn into a noodle.
Yeah. At some point the season wins, huh?
Right.
Yeah, man. It's, I love all the stuff with cycling. I've recently just picked up another bike that I didn't need, which seems to be the case. I'm very much an N+1 type of guy. Yeah. So I picked up a new road bike. Buddy of mine's got a local shop, Nated Wheelhouse Bikes, and he got a Cervelo S5 that came in with this really nice iridescent paint on it. And
okay.
It looks like a space rocket, so I figured
you gotta do what you gotta do. Yeah.
Yeah. That I just always laugh, right? Because I'm like, like this thing when it was created at the factory and it's thinking about its life ahead of itself, and it's like, oh man, we're gonna end up with this. Like we're a top end road bike, like full deal, and then it shows up and like I'm the guy riding it. It's like, what the fuck is this, man?
Yeah, odds are it would end up on some dentist.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, you're. Or like on a wall and nobody rides it.
Ugh, that's the biggest bummer.
Yeah, it's true. That happens.
Nothing hurts me more than the idea of like a really nice Ferrari sitting in someone's garage. Like that thing was meant to run, dude.
But some people get into cycling for like geeking on it the same way you'd be into watches, like that's just what they get out of it.
I have that too,
like having
but I like riding it.
Yeah. I like riding it and beating it up. But some folks just like a pretty thing, and they want it to, they take it off the wall to get it tuned up, and put it back on the wall.
So for you, full machine. This thing is full built for performance. It is a tool.
Yeah. I used it. I mean, I still have it. I still have to pay for my bike, so that helps. But I used to really like breaking them when I was racing.
Breaking them.
Yeah. If you can just whatever, be it hopefully not crashes.
Sure.
But if you could just, through wearing it out, just turn the bottom bracket into dust.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Dude, the wattage and stuff. Now, more and more I'm educating myself on cycling as I'm trying to get better at it now that I'm on the backside of my competitive career and my body's bashed to shit. And so I'm trying to unfuck some things by adding more endurance
Yeah.
into my training, as it's something I've never been good at. And my goal with it is, well, A, I don't have the skeleton to be very good at it.
Mm-hmm.
And by good, I compare it to like the last sport, which was Highland Games, which I managed to be best in the world at. And like, there's a 0% chance that's in the cards for cycling. I don't
Right.
see any world championships that I
Yeah.
am a threat for
It's good
at,
that you
any,
know
at
that.
any point in this
It's good that you
timeline.
know that, yeah.
And so because I'll never see that success, it will always allow me to enjoy it as a hobby. And I can't freak out and get competitive and focused. So it's like picking something I enjoy, but I can't be great at.
I think a lot of people find cycling because some other sport beat them up. And
yeah, which is what Highland Games was.
Do into your 80s. It's good on your bones, stuff like that.
Now with like, man, following you and following the Stravas and then like the mileage and hours that you're putting on the bike every week, how different is this training that you're doing, which looks insane to me? Like this right now looks like a full-time job as much as you're on the bike.
Yep.
How different is that training load versus competing?
It's pretty comparable. So it's different when you're racing. Like once you get into the racing season, it's pretty much your training is the races that you do, and they would have us do a lot of race days. Like it's easy to do 70 race days a year. You do like a week-long stage race, rest week, repeat. So I kind of have to, because I don't compete anymore, I kind of have to make up for that with it just in training with volume, stuff like that.
Right.
But as far as like hours on the bike, I do about the same.
Okay.
I probably don't go as hard. There's a lot less structure. I do have a bunch of stuff that I juggle. So it's not like, here's my workouts, I'm going to nail them and squeeze everything else in. It's just like, oh, I have a chill week, I'm going to do 30 hours.
So. I have a chill week, I'll do 30 hours on the bike. Yeah. So essentially you're riding enough at this point that a regular 9-to-5 full-time job doesn't even allow the hobby. No,
I can't do that.
No.
It'd be one or the other if I had a job.
Yeah.
I just have 11 different jobs that I can squeeze in.
Dude, that's exactly what my life is. So, it's like I found a dozen things that somehow equal a real job
at some point, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. As we are elder millennials.
Yeah. I don't know what's my side hustle, what my job is anymore. So it's fun.
What difference does it make?
Exactly. Yeah.
I think technically my apparel company is still numero uno, but outside of that, everything's catching up relatively quickly. I just with what you're doing and most of your stuff being these the King of the Mountain stuff with your worst retirement ever. Do you dig and hunt and find the ones you want and then build a plan, or sometimes do you just stumble across while you're out on a ride and you're like, oh, go for it?
Generally, like the kind of known climbs is just something that I would have heard of. So a lot of times people send me those, be like, hey, I want to see what you can do on my local climb. That was kind of how it started. And I would basically like crowdsource which hills to do. Oh, sorry, kill that.
No worries.
I would just crowdsource which hills to do and then show up there. And now I kind of just have a collection of them. But yeah, they're all just available. And then there's local ones that I kind of like to do for training.
Any favorites from around the world that like either haunt your dreams sure. And you need to go back and hit again?
Yeah, there's a lot in all those categories. I haven't been able, since I started doing this, I haven't been able to go to the East Coast enough at all. And there's a lot of cool climbs. Like I was halfway through. Well, I was just starting an East Coast trip this year when COVID hit, and I ran home before the world shut down.
Yeah, right. You don't want to get stuck.
Yeah, it was a point where it's just like, are they going to close all the airports permanently? And they never did. But there was a point I was the only person at the Atlanta airport this year.
Very strange, in March,
right?
Like for the last probably 10 years of my life, like I've flown 40 times a year.
Yeah.
And so like I haven't been on an airplane or to an airport since February. It's a very strange thing for me.
It's really weird.
Like I feel out of practice. Like
because any different when we get back,
Right.
Like,
and it's
like temperature checks and you're taking your shoes off.
Yeah, it's very, very, very odd times. But luckily, this all clean up in November, right after the election.
Yeah, it's gonna be fine. But the yeah, so there's various KOMs all over the country. I want to get back to Mount Lemmon in Tucson. That's kind of a big one. There's I haven't done enough in Europe, to be honest. The one that I think about every day, and I have this KOM and I think it's relatively safe, but it's Mauna Kea in Hawaii. So it's
Oh,
the big
geez.
island. You go. It's the longest. It's the most climb that you can do by altitude elevation at all. It's just the most. So you start at the beach, you dip your bike in the ocean, and then you go up. The top is 14,300 feet
Oh my
of the
God.
Mauna Kea Observatory. It's amazing. It's the Keck Observatory, I think.
Like
Um,
I'm fairly certain I couldn't finish it. Like I think my body would
no,
just be
that's
like, "We're
the thing.
done, man."
When I did it, I wrote it. It was before I was doing anything on YouTube. So it was my last day as a pro cyclist. It was New Year's Eve, 2016. And I was kind of like, it was sort of emotional. I was there with, I just met the founder of Instagram, Kevin Systrom's a friend now. He rides bikes. It
Right
was kind of
on.
his idea to do it. And I was like, okay, I'll do this. And I went for it. At the time, I think only like 13 people had even completed that Strava segment. And I got the KOM by like 2 hours.
2 hours. That's a
Yeah, I
fairly
did it
safe. Right.
just
What?
under 5 hours. Just no one at a high level had gone for it.
Of course,
And
knife. Bit of a knife to a gunfight.
exactly. And
Yeah.
what I realized was like no one at a high level had done anything on Strava, and it got a lot of kudos. It had a lot of engagement, and I had kind of brand partners from the sport who I were still in touch with, and they were all like, hey, this is cool. And that was sort of a moment where I realized that, oh, there's a future for me, nothing to do with bike racing, in like creating content, having adventures, and it might possibly be way cooler. And the climb is just like, again, you start at the beach on a perfect warm Hawaii day and you finish and there's 5 feet of snow at the top. And Kevin Systrom has some Dom. And I was like, this is okay. I don't need pro cycling to do cool shit on bikes.
No, of course, right? Like
Yeah.
what a
Well,
what a
that
cool
was a tough
thing.
realization.
So, like for my history and the way it kind of works, like so I was a track and field thrower in college, shot disc and hammer, and then a few years of powerlifting, a few years of weightlifting, and then finally got into the Scottish Highland Games.
Mm.
And Scottish Highland Games end up being this kind of weird loophole within strength sports of like if you're a really good thrower, there's this other cool thing you can try to go to called the Olympics. It's brand new, and that's where talented people go compete.
Yeah.
I, as the next tier down, found the Highland Games.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was a little bit better across 9 events and got to do this other thing. And I mean, they pay for our travel. There was prize money every weekend at the pro level, and was really this great sport for me. And I was wondering, because like at the Olympic level with track and field, dude, money's tough.
Oh
Like
yeah.
those dudes make a hard time trying to make a living, and it's tough with sponsors, especially with, I don't think any of them are taught coming out of college at,
Mm-hmm.
22 years old, that all of a sudden you sign a deal with someone like Nike and it's the biggest paycheck you've ever gotten, which is,
Right.
maybe mid 50, 50 grand to 100 grand for whatever
Yeah.
they're paying top end shot putters, which are only 2 on the planet. And they don't push anything else. Like
Right.
they don't push any other socials or anything because all their focus is gone toward throwing.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, dude, Nike doesn't care. Like they're just going to move on. Like they're not promoting throwers.
Right.
So why would you not take that time to build a brand and a business and something bigger for yourself as a personality if you got it?
That's true. Yeah. No, it's pro cycling isn't. It's not that top heavy, but it's certainly comparable. Like the top, there's a few guys making 7 figures, and then
I could probably name all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then there's a lot of, like, probably a third of the Tour de France is making $50,000 a year. And what's crazy is just like, so to your point, like the 8th best shot putter in the world is,
he's barely getting by.
but that guy is so good at shot put. Like that's the part that's not fair.
No, right.
That guy is incredibly good, and he's an inch from being the best guy, but he gets nothing. So there is like there's definitely to not disrespect those folks is like there's something glorious about competing and like
100%.
going to the Olympics and all that stuff. And I felt that at my level in pro cycling too. But at some point, it's just like, well, I don't want to do this until I'm 40 and never make $1.
Yeah, and be broken
what
by
else is
it.
going on? Yeah, yeah, because the sport doesn't love you as much as you love it.
Yeah, I mean, our careers, looking at it, like you competed as a pro from 2009 to 2016, which is, it's damn near the exact same window I was competing in Highland Games prior to injury and retiring. And you kind of went the same way, right? Like a major crash and kind of backed off.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the crash that took me back. I was just, there was a point where I was 30 and I was on one of the better teams, and I was World Tour, which is the top tier, and then that team merged, so I went back down to like a lower tier team for a year, went back up to the World Tour, and I realized that like I'm 30 and I kind of know where my peak is, and I know what the salary is, and I know what the lifestyle is at that peak. So it just didn't make sense to go anymore.
To continue.
Yeah. So there wasn't any injury. There was just like, it's basically the arc has shown itself.
Yeah. Right. Kind of a realization of, the ceiling. And kind of, once you kind of grasp that the ceiling's where it is the juice worth the squeeze anymore?
Right.
Man. Now, with your history in cycling, were there other disciplines you also enjoy, mountain biking or anything else, or is it just road?
Yeah, I was always really into road. I liked track racing a lot. The velodrome thing. I didn't think I was any good at it. I think I stopped when I was too young. But part of the problem with track racing is like that gets into the shot put level of top heavy.
Sure.
So when I was 22, I went to nationals for track, didn't do that well, and was kind of like, okay, moving on. And I got an offer for a pro road team, which also wasn't lucrative, but it was something.
Right.
And I was just on that track forever. And then sort of last year, so I'm already retired. I just started to play background on the velodrome because I enjoyed it. And I did a really good time for one of their disciplines, to where I want to look back into that at some point. But
the velodrome stuff.
Yeah.
Now it's more sprint based, right?
Generally, yeah, that's what I would have thought. But there's a couple events that are longer. The 4K individual pursuit is kind of that's one of the key events. It's not an Olympic event anymore. There's a team pursuit is an Olympic event.
So how does that work?
So the individual pursuit is just a 4-kilometer time trial by yourself.
Okay.
And then the team one is just a team time trial. So you have 4-man team, and you take turns pulling on the track for 4K. So it's short, but kind of in the range that I was still pretty good at.
So with the team, I mean, you're all out at the same time. So like how many are on the team?
It's 4 guys.
Okay, so you have 3 drafting, and then you rotate through.
So basically, like, yeah, one guy would do a half lap, pull off.
Okay.
I swing up track, I swing back down. So I looked into that, but that was when I had a really bad crash. Was like last summer. I was actually shooting to go to qualify for the Olympics. That didn't happen this year.
And your crash was on velodrome.
Correct. Yeah. But I really like that racing a lot, but it was a discipline that I never really got to get into. And since then, yeah, it's just, I love riding up mountains.
Yeah. Well,
speaks to me.
Oh man. As a cyclist who's not built for climbing, I've started just enjoying it more, because with as beat up as I've been and trying to fix my body, uphills have become, I can see the high reward and low risk. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not going to fall going at 6 miles an hour. That's going to be terribly detrimental to me. It's just going to be embarrassing.
I bet you go downhill pretty fast though.
Yes. Me and gravity occasionally become pretty good friends. Now with that velodrome, like what for a 4K time, like what's a good time at that? And then what are the teams doing that, just to see the difference?
So it depends a lot on the track. The track in Los Angeles it's a super steep track. It's shorter. So there's all these, like every track had its own personality.
Interesting. So there's not a standard.
No, I mean, there's like 4.5 minutes is fast. The world record was around 4 minutes. And a world record track, like now it's crazy smooth pavement. They're up at high altitude, that kind of deal. So like those are getting set in Aguas Calientes in Mexico, or Bolivia has a high velodrome now.
Yeah,
The
elevation
track in
changes
LA,
everything, right?
yeah, exactly. The track in LA was super slow. So the track record when I did it, the test was 4:25, and I did a 4:30, and it was like my first pursuit in 10 years or something. My first time, I had all the technique wrong, so I was like, okay, I'm probably good at this. And then I crashed 3 months later and never did it again.
Yeah, man.
I can still get back.
I haven't spent enough time on a fixed gear bike to be real comfortable with that idea within the velodrome system of
sure,
no brakes, baby, just all go.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. Like I always felt safer. It's ironically that was where I had my worst crash by far. But on a velodrome, because you don't have any brakes, there's no brakes to slam.
That's true. No one in front of you is going to make a mistake.
Yeah, you can see the entire velodrome at all times from where you are, so it's not like you're going to round a corner into whatever.
Less cars.
No descents. Yeah, exactly.
There's no trash.
Yeah, there's slightly fewer cars. So it's a smaller pack generally. So like 20 guys in a velodrome race is kind of a lot.
Yeah, I bet that would be pretty
with
slammed.
20 guys on the road. So
yeah, I have no concept whatsoever to that feeling of being bunched into watching the tour and the peloton in that group. Like I'd be shitting bricks stuck in the middle of that, just of like, everyone's very close to me.
Yeah, you get used to it. It's funny. Like I came up racing in the U.S. for a few years. That's where I got into it. And then I finally went to Europe, and like they're so much tighter there. The thing is, everyone in that pack is such a high level that you can take a corner at 30 miles an hour and you're touching guys on both sides and everyone's fine. Like that's just it's not a big deal. And then when I went back to the States, I came back to that smaller team for a year. And I was in the pack. I'm like, man, there's so much room. I could just
right.
Less dense.
It's interesting that there's differences in the culture. The cycling in Europe versus cycling in the States, even that both are at a top end.
Mostly it's just the level, like the best guys from the US go to Europe. So it's just more expertise, more years and better legs.
Right. Huh. So back to kind of looking at like shot put and throwers and the Olympic level and what you were talking about, it being kind of top heavy with cycling. One of those things that I find kind of interesting is the gap between, and I think this is one of the things I enjoy most about looking at your rides, is what I think the gap between is someone who believes they're a good amateur rider who rides in their spare time and has a job and does all this. And even if they're crushing it, the gap from there to your bottom of the pack, middle of the pack pro is a lot bigger than the gap from bottom pro to top pro.
Yeah, that's true. Sure.
Like, all those guys, you're talking about, 5% difference in, across the top end of peloton and top 10, of tour guys. Whereas your guy who thinks he's a good amateur putting in 15 hours a week on the bike, like
it's probably the same I would guess it's the same on all sports, just someone who like dedicates, a decade to perfecting something. What's cool about cycling is that we could still ride together.
Yeah.
Whereas like, if you think you're good at basketball, there's no way for you to, get dunked on by LeBron.
No, you don't scale down. Me and LeBron don't have a really fun one-on-one game.
Right. But I can go ride, like I can do a group ride in LA, non-COVID times. And like, I can ride with 200 people and they can keep up and I don't always win. It's like funny. Yeah. Like they can easily draft
the big groups, and it's always fun to watch. Like I loved all the strategy of learning that about the Tour de France and what a monster the peloton is, because that workload gets shared so much, and the draft matters.
Oh yeah, draft is 70% on a flat road. So it's night and day.
Yeah, just the average speeds those guys hold up for the course is bonkers. I've honestly looked at some Strava times and I'm like, half they did it in half the time I did it. Like, I don't I don't understand where my legs, like, how's that even possible? And it's so fucking wild to see. Now, do you have to focus a ton now on recovery, as I mean, Father Time is continuing to knock on our door?
Yeah, I'm 34, so I'm still like, if I was, things shake around, I could still be racing. There's plenty of guys that race like closer to 40.
Sure.
So I'm not, thankfully my body has held up so far. But yeah, recovery, I focused on that when I was racing too. It's you can't train if you're not recovering.
What type of stuff did you find to be just the most beneficial recovery?
I mean, it's really just about, like, honestly, like, sleep is the biggest thing, and just like actual rest. The whole, like, gadgets and that, I think that's all sort of secondary to just get off your feet and go to bed.
Yeah,
so I've got like the Whoop little fitness tracker thing. I was big on ice baths when I raced.
Yeah, and you've come up with the ice legs.
Yeah,
your system.
Yeah, so I had, like, we would do this thing at races, do like tour of Utah or whatever, like just hot stuff in Spain. And I would, every night after every stage, I would just like do 5 laps from the ice machine in the hotel to my bathtub and just like sit in there. And I remember like wishing that a product existed. It was just like, why can't I just live in the freezer? So I just designed one. It's called Ice Legs.
Yeah.
And it's just like ice packs that you strap along your
leg. You sent me a set of it. I really like it.
Yeah.
It's been great.
You don't have to freeze your junk.
No. Despite that, when I'm usually beat up, it's more like into the hips and low back. So
right.
Cold tub it is.
Yeah, there you go. That's true.
Yeah, my
demo is cyclist.
Is more legs, less arms and shoulders.
Yep.
Man, whenever I was competing, like if we were in Scotland, it was a much different sport, because I would end up competing like 11 out of 16 days. Mm-hmm. And so, trying to recover in between would be pretty critical, because essentially most of those days, like, instead of training at all, you're just going to go compete.
Sure.
And kind of have to look at it as such.
Right.
Which are important and which ones aren't.
Right.
And man, doing the ice bath, at least over there, you could find water that's cold, like whether it's a creek or a lake or something. Yeah, it's plenty of cold water, and people who don't speak well. Scotland's a very, very interesting place. Have you not spent any time over there?
Not enough. Not in Scotland. Little Ireland, little England.
So I haven't spent any time in Ireland at all. There's some really cool road routes that, perhaps further into my later years, I'd love to crush. Like the North Scotland 500 would be a really fun kind of backpacking route, or bikepacking route.
Cool. Yeah.
Finding those adventures that would loosely fit in with whatever I'm trying to do currently.
Totally. Yeah. No, I'd be that too. Ireland looks great. A lot of rain though. I'm scared of rain.
Yeah, that's what would crush me being over there in the summer in Scotland. It's like every day is going to be 45 and piss and rain. Mm-hmm. And so like by day 6, like all your kit's wet. And like, getting up the next morning, you're just putting on wet shit. Right. It's just breaking into
LA, I think, because I never liked riding in the rain.
Well, you've eliminated a factor.
Yeah.
The weather is never the problem for why you can't go ride.
Right. It's traffic or fire or something.
Traffic or fire.
Yeah.
Or pandemic or protest.
Yeah. That hasn't kept me from riding bikes so far.
Yeah. Even though I'm sure someone's yelling at you.
Yeah. It was one of those things, like early on, I talked about this on my YouTube channel, where it's like the first month of the pandemic, people are like, oh, you better keep riding inside. Like, you only ride inside. And I'm like, I couldn't sustain like a good 2 weeks riding inside when it was my job to. Like, it's hard. And the volume that I typically do. Also, like, I need the sun or I'm going to lose my mind.
Well, we've also proven that vitamin D is very critical in protection for your immune system and coronavirus, and for this. Yeah. It bums me out that none of our officials have ever made a really strong statement about, like, maybe this is the time we should check health, check the general health in America.
They golf so that they can get the sun.
Good, perfect.
But it's funny. I average like 23 hours a week on the bike, and I still have low vitamin D. Like I
Do you
still feel
really?
yeah.
Where's
Um,
your genealogy from?
um, ugh, my dad's German, mom's like Russian Jew kind of thing.
Interesting. That surprises me that you wouldn't produce more vitamin D naturally
Yeah.
than from being. I mean, when you say Jew, you mean like Israeli, like all the way?
No, like Eastern Europe,
Okay.
Ukraine, Russia.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, they didn't keep great track of it.
People with not a ton of melanin in the skin.
I guess not. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Weird, right?
But
Because I mean that makes sense with the stuff on vitamin D because I mean your big at risk communities were African American and the elderly and sedentary. So these would be three big
right.
groups that African Americans just don't produce the same amount of vitamin D from the sun that we do. So supplementation would be critical. And then the elderly aren't going outside as much.
Right.
And then sedentary was they've
Yeah.
made a choice.
Yeah. But I remember early on, I was thinking like, okay, the folks who were saying you need to ride, you need to stay inside. I was like, I'm going to pace myself for this. I'm going to act like this isn't going to be 2 weeks, and I'm going to go ahead and trust that being out, that if I'm outside, I'm not talking to anybody, and I'm not interacting with people, I'm not going to catch anything.
Yeah.
I just kept riding out in Malibu and kind of just doing my training. And it's funny is like now we're in the cases are 5x what they were when people were freaking out in March and April. And those same folks before who were like going outside, well, now they're, I'm seeing on their Instagram, they're at, parties with red cups and they're doing, big rides with the
Yeah.
groups and stuff like that. And I'm like, see, y'all didn't pace yourselves. Like I'm still doing the same. I've ridden with like a total of 6 people.
Right. And it's the same 6 dudes. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know, it's tough. Whatever.
Well, and for me, like even keeping that same group of dudes, like I have a handful of guys here in St. Louis I ride with, and for me, and as weird as kind of like this lifestyle schedule is with how work or podcast or video stuff or whatever, I need a smaller group that I'm like, hey, can you guys go ride in an hour?
Yeah.
And yeah, and so you got to be able to sneak away. Like I always find the inconvenience of trying to put 20 people together for something just mind numbing. I'm like, I'm not interested. I'll just go by myself.
Right. No, I have 2 buddies who it's just like we're a text thread all times. It's like, when are you riding? We'll figure it out.
Now, are you pretty much set up that you can roll out from home?
Yeah. Yeah. I hardly ever drive.
You don't have
like
to commute.
LA is great. Like so you'd be shocked how many awesome roads. Well, you follow me on Strava, but there's so many amazing rides, like right out of the city. Pretty much like anywhere you are in the city, there's a good pocket that you can kind of sneak into and do some good riding. And honestly, like I live in Santa Monica, and if I go north along the coast, it's like a little bit scary in traffic for about 20 minutes.
Right.
You get into the canyons, it's the best riding in the world.
So just up PCH and then.
Yeah, north on PCH, and then like anywhere, like if you're along the coast going north, anywhere you go right is just like a 45-minute beautiful climb.
Oh man.
Top of the ridge, and you can go to the top, and you can go down the other side, and you can just play in there forever.
At some point, I'll road trip my ass out that way with all the tools on the back.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah. You
sneak in a ride with you. It'd be fun. I went. We did a big like 8-week road trip this summer, and my girlfriend and I and our videographer, and ended up in the Pacific Northwest and met up with another cyclist up there. A handful of cyclists, but up there was this guy Dustin Klein, runs a YouTube channel, more gravel stuff and does some artsy stuff. Is really good dude. And like I met up to meet with them, and they're like, yeah, today's gonna be pretty cool gravel ride. It's gonna be like 52 miles and 7,000 feet of climbing. I'm like, I don't have that ability. Like
that sounds like a lot.
Yeah, I can't do that. And so they cut me a shorter lap that was like 32 and 4,700 feet, and even then I was still just fucking trashed. Yeah, that's well for me with body weight and everything else. Like I'll track something like that, and like that's a almost 5,000 calorie ride for me.
Yeah,
and it just becomes tough for me to get enough fuel in, especially with water. If it's hot, like I'll just rain sweat.
Yeah, I get that.
Do you use anything for the hydration supplement or?
Yeah, I'm sponsored by Monster Hydro this year.
Oh, so, yeah. I didn't know if you do anything other than that, like noon tabs or anything else to.
Yeah, I certainly have. It's kind of just whatever whatever's at the house. But yeah, I generally like 50-50 water and electrolytes.
Yeah.
That's kind of the move.
Yeah. I'm trying to get better at the eating while riding as well.
Yeah, that's the thing too, where it's like, you're riding a bike. It's not, you can't be like unwrapping a bar. Like that's kind of a distracting. So you have to just force yourself to, especially you have to force yourself to like every half hour eat a bar.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's weird because typically for me, like a normal day, like I basically do intermittent fasting until,
Mm.
1 or 2 p.m. But at that point, when I switch to eating, I'm going to probably eat, 16 or 18 ounces of steak and then a cup of rice and then
So you
basically
wake up and you
repeat.
don't eat until 1 p.m.?
Yeah, usually 1 or 2 p.m. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So that's just what I have found has worked really, really well for me. Seems to help with inflammation and it seems to help me with, just body composition. And it's just less calories throughout the day because I'm not eating till 2.
Yep.
Typically in the evening once I've switched into more of an herbal recovery mode, I may try to find some cookies.
Got it.
So yeah, between cannabis and CBD, at some point in the evening, I'm going to get hungry.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, for the most part, that's what I'm eating is a mostly protein and fat diet with some carbohydrates built in, depending on how much I'm trying to either run or cycle.
Yeah, I think that's not too, minus the fasting. That's not too different from what I do. It's
Okay.
just like here's the regular. I kind of like, this is the protein that I eat every day and the vegetables, and then I'll adjust the carbs based on how much I'm riding.
Right on. Now, I find this interesting with cycling and I guess with other sports too is so you're clean tattoo.
Mm-hmm.
And just this, it's such an anti-performance enhancing drug sport, despite that it seems it's gotten in quite a bit of trouble for it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem to be that anti, but at the same time,
Right.
as far as information and public opinion goes and all this type of stuff, one of the things that really confuses me about that as coming from strength sports where it's thought of very differently is once you're riding just for you and you're not competing, and so you're not open to any type of drug testing, my thoughts on that are, well, if there aren't rules and I'm not being tested, why does that matter?
Sure.
If I'm just trying to enjoy riding as much as I can and some help would be great. I mean, I drink coffee, I choose better food. I already consume things that are built to enhance my performance.
Right. Yeah. I'm curious. I want to back up. How do you think enhancing drugs are perceived in your sport versus mine?
So within Highland Games would be different than strength sports in general. So within Highland Games, we were drug tested 6 or 7 times throughout a season. And so me personally, I didn't start using testosterone until after I had retired in 2016.
Okay. So it is against the rules. You're not allowed to do it. Okay.
Yep.
It's not a USADA sport, right? Or it's not.
It is in Scotland.
Okay.
So whenever I'm over there, we're tested accordingly. Within the States, we don't, it's not regulated like a sport with like a federation per chance. We're more of brought to festivals as part of entertainment. We're paid as vendors, or not vendors, but independent contractors. And but we would be drug tested randomly throughout the year, just by different like a world championship or national championships were always typically drug tested.
I get it.
And so, I mean, from my stance on that is I don't have any moral issue with drugs or anything like that. But if I chose to compete in a sport and these are the rules they set forth, me bending those rules feels shitty.
Of course.
But now that I'm not involved with a sport with rules, let her rip. But strongman and other things like that would be different. Like those are non-drug tested sports. So it really varies. So like powerlifting, there are drug tested and non-drug tested federations. So you can choose to pick and play however and by whatever rules that you would like to conform to.
Wild, yeah.
Very, very interesting. But now that I'm on the back end of my competitive years and essentially anything I'm doing is for me, I'm curious of how everything works and what can be done.
I hear that. Yeah. I've definitely been curious. I think in cycling, well, I'm still competitive in the Strava environment.
Sure.
So just from that perspective, like I wouldn't want to experiment with any kind of doping or whatever, because that wouldn't be a level playing field for whatever that is. Of course, like no one on Strava has ever been tested. That's not how it works.
So so that becomes my issue of why it's not a level playing field. If no one's saying this is illegal, other than a bunch of people who aren't being drug tested taking a stance on it, which
well, then that might just be me. Part of what initially got me into my post-retirement career thing is I was the guy with the clean tattoo. When I raced, I was very outspoken, and cycling claims to be anti-doping, but it looks the other way a lot. It's still very interesting. There's still a lot of big questions when you watch the races. So I've never really figured that out, but personally, like I never touched it, and that was a lot of what kind of made me a name, and got me a loyal following outside of it. So when I stopped racing, I started playing around on Strava, and it turns out there was a guy in LA who had every KOM, he had every record on Strava in the city. Like I'm not exaggerating. The bottom of every hill
just has it.
Yeah, he was all of it. And he was doing it under like a fake name, and someone connected his name to a masters racer, like an age group racer who tested positive for EPO and was caught selling it on the internet.
Oh, nice.
Like he had FBI
influencer.
Exactly. So I had just gone, like I went and did a group ride for fun, and it was like my first, like one of the first rides I ever put on Strava. And I happened to got his KOM that this like notorious, everyone in LA was just like really sick of this one guy.
Just hates that he's openly cheating and slaughtering KOMs.
And they're like, this is bullshit. And so I went and I took his KOM, kind of just ripping the ride. And I've never had that. I think that was like the first time I had like over 1,000 likes on Instagram posts.
Oh shit! I
had a screenshot of that KOM. So the next 6 months of my life, I'd go out every day and I'd get a KOM from this guy. Cause ultimately, like you can dope, but I'm still going to outfit you.
I fucking love it.
Yeah. It was
I love the arms race aspect of just people fighting for bragging rights on a hill.
Yeah. It's really satisfying. And like, especially LA, it's a very competitive, Strava scene. There's a lot of, cyclists here who try really hard and do the group rides and stuff. So that turned into a thing that like I was essentially getting sponsors for, was like, I'm the clean guy taking the dirty KOMs.
Right on.
I also think maybe it's different in other sports, but I think like the drugs that would help in cycling are all kind of dangerous.
To
where like you're manipulating your blood.
So you mean like EPO with blood doping?
Yeah.
So
I think
endurance
like
type stuff.
Growth is probably pretty easy, and that I guess that would be an exception.
I'm gonna be super fucking honest with you. I don't think it's worth the money.
Okay, that's interesting.
I've taken it a long time. I took it, I have taken it in the past for a long time. I took it to help with healing from surgeries and injuries and stuff like that after coming out. And growth is one of those really strange things that it's one of those that like you should notice some effects from taking this daily in 6 months, and at the cost of $400 or $500 a month, and then questionable whether or not you're getting quality stuff. And so like kind of the litmus test of how do you know if your growth is good is do your hands fall asleep during the day? Because it tends to put a little bit of swelling and growth on nerves and tendons and ligaments, and so there's just less space, right? So you'll end up getting a little bit more numb hands, and that's one of those like, oh, your hands fall asleep? Oh, you got good stuff.
Jeez. All right. Yep.
And for me, I just never saw the benefit of growth for the price. I think there's better options with peptides and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah. See, I blissfully, like, I don't know anything about a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
I think the three that like cyclists get caught for would be growth, EPO, and testosterone, I think are like the big ones. And removing the EPO part, what EPO does is like it increases your hematocrit, increases your oxygen utilization in your body. So there's another version of that is people would take blood out of their body when they're recovered, and then put it back in during the race. So those are, but either way, like I don't want to carry around blood bags. You know what I mean? It's just
no, that seems fucking bonkers to me.
Too.
Oh yeah, and EPO is a good way to fucking die too.
Right.
Like you can absolutely take enough of that to die, whereas growth and test you can't.
Right. If you're just like a 40-year-old person who likes riding their bike and likes to feel good, and you feel like growth makes you feel better, and you're not beating anybody who's not on, you know what I mean? Like, I don't care.
I think it's more important for the other 23 hours of my day that I'm not on the bike.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're taking it for health, that's a thing. But I guess also like in that, if that's the case, then you've kind of lost the right to compete.
Interesting.
And in cycling, like the masters, the age group scene is the competitive racing element is still a big part of it.
Oh, I'm sure it is. Now, I didn't know if like within that, like, would they have testosterone use exemption since, I mean, getting at that age level, blood levels may be, or testosterone levels could be south anyway. Like I know whenever I started using it, I got my blood work done at 30 while I was still competing, and then finished competing at like 31 or 32, somewhere around there.
Okay.
And my natural testosterone level was 80. And this is prior to any use whatsoever. And so if my natural level for average adult males in our age range was supposed to be 300 to 1300, 80's bad. So like I'm not sleeping good, libido's down, appetite's down, all these type of things. So I have supplemented since I retired to keep me within that 300 to 1300 window. I've run a couple cycles hotter than that, and it's interesting.
Yeah.
And I know stories of people who've run, you know, big doses prior, but you know, it's one of those things. I mean, look, it fucking works. I mean, anyone who thinks testosterone isn't a benefit is fucking crazy. I mean,
yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
You know, I understand why it is banned within sports. And I don't have any issue with it being banned in sports. It's just I'm always curious to the moral dilemma on the backside if we're not competing. But for you,
I'm not sure what it is if for sure there are TUEs for testosterone, but I think it's pretty hard to prove that you need it. The only one that I know of who actually had that was Lance Armstrong, because he was missing a testicle.
Yeah. Right.
Which is a valid reason to get testosterone, except that if that enables you to supplement up to a normal level when everyone else is week 3 of the Tour de France, and my testosterone, when I was competing, my testosterone levels was like a 10-year-old girl. And
just trashed, I bet.
All of us, yeah.
You guys are so raw. Yeah.
Same thing. So it'd be a huge advantage to be able to get even up to like a normal baseline level.
Oh, for sure. Like if you could keep things around $1,000, you probably feel pretty sweet.
Yeah, that like might explain all of Lance's dominance. Actually, it's just that he was the only one with any testosterone.
Well, that and it's also interesting whenever you do see the mixture, you know, within an athlete of someone who's got the ability mixed with someone who's willing to do that level of work. Sure. And then any type of assistance to that is a turbocharge. Yeah. You know, maybe, but there's plenty of people out there that, you know, don't have it. I always love just seeing athletes, you know, just from an athletic perspective, like LeBron James, right? Like, I'm so glad that guy found his sport. Yeah. And we get to see it. And just realize what a freak that those people are out there.
What was his first year in the NBA? It was like 2004 or something like that.
Something like that, yeah. Like it's I was just finishing college.
How long he's been doing it at that level. It's really amazing. Like there are people who were born that year and in high school now.
Dude, because like I'm older than him, but wasn't, you know, like Kobe Bryant was already doing his thing by the time I'd reached normal age. Mm-hmm. You know, he was playing while I was in high school. He was an adult already. Yep. And then like because LeBron James is younger than me, there's something that just always makes me think that he's still in high, like he's just a rookie. Like he's like he's still new in the league. Like this young kid's really turning it on.
Yeah, that's funny.
But I mean, he's got to be toward the end of his.
Yeah, I think it seems like he has a couple more years left. The rumor is that he wants to play with his son in the NBA.
How fun.
And I think his son is like a couple of years from being there, which is like such a cool vision. But yeah, that's the guy who like took his body care to the next level. Does all of, you and I talking about ice baths, like
right.
It's a whole different thing.
Oh, a whole different thing, right? I mean, can you imagine being in high school and someone being like, I think you've got the potential to be a multi-billion-dollar athlete.
Right.
Like, what?
Right. But
then pay attention to this.
Like, did you watch the Jordan documentary?
I haven't yet.
The Last Dance. Oh, you'll love it.
I've heard it. Yeah, it's incredible.
Just like there's a lot of drinking, a lot of cigars, a lot of stuff that just like as an athlete, I'm like, he's out drinking and playing golf, and the game is at 4 p.m. and he's golfing at 10 a.m. And it's just like, and he's going to score 50 points.
And he's gonna, right.
But it's crazy where it's just like, that's like, weirdly, it must have been a low level of competition athletically and a high level of skill. And I think that's changed in the NBA.
I do
like
too.
These guys, like now these guys are pacing over the course of a game. They're pacing over the course of a season. And I think back then it was just like, oh, we're playing tonight. I got 6.
Yeah. People that want to compare generations of sports back and forth and compare Jordan to Kobe or compare Jordan to LeBron, I don't find it fair.
Right.
I believe Jordan is as good of a gamer as we've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just can get it done when it counts, right? Mm-hmm. And I wonder that with Mike, if that was because the competition level he didn't find threatening, or was this a way that he also felt to keep an edge?
Right.
That like, I can still go fucking do
today,
this and beat
all
you.
the LeBron stuff.
Of course.
That's the other one too.
Yeah, of course, right? But man, to be that dominant, right, coming out of high school in a sport, to enter the NBA, to already be a star.
Yep.
Like he didn't sit the bench for 2 seasons.
Right. That's a weird thing too. I think about that with respect to cycling, where like in cycling there's far fewer people that are actually competing to be good. It's a much smaller playing field or pool, I guess, of people going for it. And at the top level, if you're 2% better than the other guys, you're way ahead and you're obviously cheating. Like the margins are tiny.
Sure.
Whereas like in basketball, how good everyone plays basketball. Mm-hmm. Like I guess it's self-selected people over 6'5" at some point.
Sure.
It's effectively a smaller pool, but it's not as small as cycling. And just trying to think like what it takes to stand out and dominate at that level is completely mind-blowing to me.
See, that's what I think about with something like Olympic sprinters, like hurdlers or even Usain Bolt. Like everyone's run before.
Right. Yeah. And there you're taking the size limitations out because you can be any height. Usain Bolt's huge, but
right. And then you're taking equipment out of the factory. What, shoes?
Yeah.
And I mean, how much can we honestly do at this point? Everyone on that stage is wearing the same shit.
Yep.
And just what a freak he is. He doesn't look like a 100-meter runner. He looks like he should be good at the 4.
Right.
And then the specialization at the Olympics, I think people don't get is, I don't know if you watched Weight of Gold, the Michael Phelps. It's really good. It's Michael Phelps documentary.
Write that down.
Talking about how rough it is coming out of the Olympics and realizing that, well, I don't have a focus now, or like, what's next? Everything in my life has been built on doing this thing, and then I did it. Now what?
Right.
Like no one's taught him how to be people.
Here's the good news, Phelps, is you're filthy rich.
Yes.
Like I did that at 30, and I didn't have shit.
Right.
I have a good Michael Phelps story, real quick. There's a really nice steak restaurant in Brentwood that the chef rides bikes.
Right on.
Occasion spot. It's called Voltaire. I was in there once, and Michael Phelps was in there. Their table, whatever, bunch of rich folks, and then Kenny G walked in. So this is LA, but so in that building, the person who could hold their breath the longest was not Michael Phelps.
It was Kenny G.
Isn't that interesting?
That's fucking fascinating, right?
Michael Phelps is the second longest breath holder in this room.
That's very rare. I think about stuff like that, like just like a handful of years ago competing in Columbus, which you're from that lovely gray city in the
Kind
winter.
of. Yeah, I was born there. I don't remember any. We left.
Okay. So the Arnold Classic is there every year, this big strength and sports bodybuilding, whatnot, semi disaster happens every year. And so kind of part of our world is like, you got to go and you have to have a booth and do that whole Fit Expo thing. Okay. So we'd competed a couple years with the Highland Games there. And so one of the years I had won the world championship the year before. And so leading into the Arnold, they're doing like an opening ceremony type of thing, and Arnold's out there. And so like I'm on stage with him and had 10 minutes backstage to kind of shoot the shit with him.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And, a lot of people are like, what was that like? I'm like, look, he's nice enough, but I'm aware that I'm one of 300,000 people he's met this weekend. He doesn't have any fucking clue who I am, and that dude's been the most famous dude in any room he's walked in since 1979.
Yeah.
That's a really weird existence.
It's got to be.
To be Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Yeah. There's moments where I find it really weird to, I have 60,000 Instagram followers, and it's just like, this is, I'm thankful that I don't have, there was a point where I was leading this race in Argentina for 6 days in 2014. And it's like, from getting out of the car to the hotel was like paparazzi, people grabbing at, people wanting photos, and I'm just like, this is Ringo all the time.
Yo,
I was like,
right.
It was fun for about 5 minutes. And I was like, I hate this. Like, I'm just doing I've got to get to bed.
Yeah.
And I just had like a tiny, tiny window of it. And yeah, you just see, and it's funny seeing like in LA, just the random celebrities that you come across and how they handle that. Or don't.
Right.
Yeah.
And look, I think there's still a lot to, you can decide to attract less of a crowd.
Sure.
I mean, look, the people like the Kardashians, paparazzi's where they're showing up because they tell them where they're going.
Right. Yeah. That's a whole
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like, you're not hassled by them. You told them to be here.
Right. Right. No, my old neighborhood, I used to live in Toluca Lake, and Wayne Knight, who was Newman on Seinfeld, around the corner, and he would always be at Trader Joe's, and every aisle somebody would ask for a photo, and I remember like walking through Trader Joe's a few times and just seeing this man be tortured, except always smiles, photo for everybody, $50 in the Salvation Army jar every time he left. And it's just like, he knows that's part of it. And he handled it. And there's others who are just like, who understandably are cracked and just like, they walk around like this with their head down with a baseball cap covering their head. And they just like, they're trying to minimize it. They wear a hood.
Well, it's, so I've met people that end up with really large followings. I mean, there's, some people within our space I know with, 2 or 3 million followers on, Instagram or any of that. And I mean, they'll end up with a, 5 or 6 hour line at one of these expos of people to want to meet them and take a picture. The weird one are a couple that I know that have that following that are very introverted, and it's work for them to be in that environment, which is so strange because like you put this out there, but then you realize that Instagram can be a solo thing that you can do as a complete introvert, share and then disappear.
I kind of feel that, to be honest with myself. I've kind of said like, I'm good at getting attention, but I don't like having attention. But the people who come up to me are cool people.
Sure.
So I enjoy that aspect of it. But the idea of like a wedding is horrifying to me. I have people staring at me. This is personal, like I gotta like, what's the actual nuts and bolts of that? There's no way. It's a strange thing.
Yeah. I it would be tough to be The Rock.
Yeah.
Like nothing's normal.
Right.
Like he can't go to the store. Mm-mm. Not that he needs to, but I hate the idea that you can't do what you want.
Yeah. I wonder if they want to, or how that works.
There's got to be at some point where you could be like, yo, let's go run and grab a bite. And you're like, oh, we can't.
Yeah. That's
because
true.
it's a hassle.
That's true.
I mean, like one of the more noticeable people I know is a buddy of mine who played the Mountain on Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah.
And so after years and years of now going back and forth to Iceland for various trips.
Yeah.
He's
I've
a
seen him
buddy.
around. He lives in Topanga.
Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
gigantic human.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that like that dude can't hide.
No.
Like you're always like, whether the show's on or no one remembers, people want to take photos with you because they don't make bigger people.
At least he's a size that isn't, I'm going to say, a little bit not approachable, you know? I'm sure he's approachable as a person.
Yes.
Also, he's intimidating if he's, you know, if he's not having a good day, folks might keep a distance.
Maybe. But
Yeah.
but he's also so big that people can't help it.
Yeah.
Like we were, my girlfriend and I were laughing about it. We'd gone on a hike and we were chatting with his girlfriend Kelsey about it, because she's from Canada and loves doing all this outdoor stuff. But since Haffy's been the size he is and competed in strongman for as long as he did, like hikes aren't in the cards at 460 pounds. Right. And so now that he's signed up for a boxing match, he's dropped a ton of weight and he's kind of down into the mid to upper threes. I think he's probably like 365, 370.
Tiny.
Svelte.
Mm-hmm.
A very lean with abs, 360.
Right.
And but like I was just imagining being on a hike, and like if we turned a corner or something like that and he's dressed in hiking gear the same as I am with a backpack and like was coming toward us, I don't know that I could keep myself from saying a thing.
Right.
Like I'm not sure that I could keep like from goddamn. Like I'd have to make a noise to at least mention that this 6'10" monster just creeped around the trail. And
that's really true.
People that size are that they don't make bigger people. Like, I mean, I've known him when he was 460 pounds. It's so much person. I don't meet a lot of people that are 200 pounds heavier than I am.
Right.
And just, it's just nuts, man. And cookies have become, was this while you were still competing too? Like that, you're just your vice.
So the cookie thing, it's hard to even figure out what's funny is everybody likes cookies. So like I became the guy in cycling who likes cookies, except that doesn't distinguish me at all because everyone likes cookies in the world. But there was a point where I think cycling fans are kind of funny, and cycling is a tough sport. Like they talk about how NBA players have an advantage when it comes to like endorsements and stuff because you see their face, you know, relative to NFL guys who have a helmet on. So it's just like a little bit less marketable.
Yeah, right. You know the people. Yeah.
So I think cycling is almost worse than the NFL in that like we're a pack. You can't even pick out which one it is. Like I fly by at 30 miles an hour. You can't figure out who I am.
Right.
So it's hard to like establish identity as a cyclist. There's a point where I was writing a blog for Bicycling Magazine. I was fresh out of college and I had a crappy weekend at some race, and they were all crappy weekends at some race. And I was like, this was rough. You know, here's what happened. If you're ever in this town, I highly recommend this cookie. That was, you know, that saved my day. And then like the next week I went to a race and someone was like, hey, I read that you like cookies. I saw your blog. So I brought you one from my favorite, whatever bakery. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And I tweet a picture of it to my 800 followers at the time.
I feel like you could just roll the dice on that for almost anyone and be like, hey, I heard you like cookies.
Yeah. No one doesn't like cookies.
Right.
Yeah. But so it like very gradually snowballed into like, I'm the cookie guy. And by the last 3 years of my career, I'd show up at a race and there would be like 3 to 5 people outside the bus with like a plate with tinfoil over it or a little bag from a bakery, like bring me something. And it was like one of the sweetest, weirdest things. Like if I had tried to do that, it never would have worked.
These are a performance answer we can all get behind.
Yeah. And like everybody,
100%.
like honestly, man, like I ate all those cookies. I never tested positive. I tried to poison me. You know what I mean? A lot of times the team doctor was like, you're not eating stuff from a stranger, right? What if it's tainted? I'm like,
no.
No. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, I'd give one to the mechanic to say like, oh yeah, I got rid of them. And then no, I ate all of them and nobody ever poisoned me.
No one tried to dose you with any THC.
No, even in Colorado, I ate their cookies. I wasn't even
fair. You can taste it.
Right. Yeah. That's
what I mean.
Well, I wouldn't have known at that point.
Well, you would have known something's odd.
That's true. Yeah.
Taste a bit weedy.
Yeah. Fair point.
Yeah,
but so then when I stopped, I was kind of like, okay, I have this event, Phil's Cookie Fondo, where I'm going to give the cookies back to the people. So I've got celebrity chefs making cookies at all these aid stations. So picture like a marathon where you stop and grab water. We have that for a bike ride. So it's like 50 to 120 miles. And every 10, 15 miles, there's a stop. And there's bars and water and gourmet cookies. And it's just like we have like a 20-foot cookie banner. Oh, it's just the dumbest.
I love it.
Like
I fucking love it.
It's so much fun.
Now I've seen. Is it the tour that you've got the Cookie Monster mascot on and chasing up the hill?
Oh, that was the Tour of California.
Tour of California. Okay.
That would come through our area, and we would always just bring out a really obnoxious, loud crowd and have a good time there. I had way more fun spectating the Tour of California than I would. Like I've got a buddy,
than riding it.
Like I've got a buddy who's like the drummer for Seal. So
Right
he
on.
brought his whole drum kit up. We had like a full-on show at Cookie Corner. We call it.
Was he part of drumming for Seal when they came out with "Kiss from a Rose on the Grave"?
No, he tours with them now.
Okay.
So it's just like, but yeah, we just build this crazy party in this other. People want to come watch the bike race, but you don't want to stand there for 5 hours and do nothing. So like, here's a section where like the riders come around a corner on Mount Baldy. They're hour 5 into a hard, sweaty day, and it's all my friends in the pack anyway. And you can hear our music from like 2 switchbacks down, and they get around the corner. It's just like a bunch of idiots waving cookie signs.
That's so good. I love it, dude. That's so good. Man, that's now here's a question I've got to ask as an athlete, and I know it comes with it. The variety of food you guys eat between cookies and then gels and all this other shit that you're taking during. You ever get hit with dodgy guts just like in the middle of a ride?
In a ride, rarely. I mean, it certainly happened. I've run into the woods a few times, but for the most part, like you kind of your body gets used to the cycle. Like I have breakfast 2.5 hours before I start riding. Pretty much the same breakfast every day. I pretty much had the same food on the bike every day, like the energy bars and the gels, stuff like that is all sort of dialed. Yeah,
so you're not surprising your system very much.
Right. We're honestly what got tricky when you're racing is like you're on a different continent every week.
Oh,
you're eating at like hotel buffets. You're eating.
Well, even water gets tricky.
Right. All that stuff. So there was definitely like I did a couple races. Oh, and there was an era where 2014 there was like a tainted meat scandal where like basically we did a stage race in China, and it was explained like you're not to eat any form of meat here because we don't know if you'll test positive for clenbuterol.
Why would there be clenbuterol in there?
Well, because one rider tested positive for clenbuterol and claimed it was meat. Yeah, a guy tested positive for.
I don't as someone.
Well, yeah, because it's made up. But the thing is, like,
as someone who's used Clen in the past, I don't understand why that would be in the meat you're eating.
It was proven somehow that it was possible to where like we all had to freak out. So like we flew to China with like.
There's no reason you would give it to an animal.
Jerky. Yeah, listen, I don't know.
Okay, I'm not a doctor.
but so yeah, that you end up with like weird diet restrictions on the road. I think I only had like one stomach bug during a race that really affected anything. Where I did a tour of California once where I didn't shit for 5 days.
You just Imodium AD, pack that thing tight and call it.
Like when it was over, I went directly to the grocery store and I shot a cranberry juice and what was the other one, and I barely made it home. It was a
cranberry juice. It was
no, not cranberry. What's the other one? Whatever. Yeah, I had a
magnesium citrate.
I had that. Yeah, and I remember
that'll
like
wipe it out.
I could not make myself shit for 5 days. And then I went to the grocery store right around the corner from my house. It was like 90-second drive back. I went from the race finish to the grocery store. Like my girlfriend had picked me up at the race in my own car. I drove to the grocery store, and I for 5 days I was trying to make myself shit. And then I drink the thing, and I'm like, oh, it's gonna be a photo finish to even get to my house.
I'm on the clock.
Yeah, it was fascinating.
Oh man,
day 2, but
it's weird. The body, for the most part, like will give you a window of like, okay, we're competing, we'll shut everything down, but
yeah,
you owe me on the back end of this. Like,
yeah, exactly,
like,
exactly.
We got things to do. Oh man, I've had I've had some disastrous affairs
You've
between
got to eat a
lifting.
lot more than we do.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like whenever I was big and like I'm 60 pounds down from like what I competed at.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I also was eating like a garbage disposal and drinking quite a bit too, since that's a bit part of the sport. No big deal to drink in the middle of a world championship. Yeah. Have a beer or two, relax.
Mm-hmm.
Fast carbs, as they call them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You pass around red wine at the races. No big deal.
It's a good move. Little antioxidants.
Before bed. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I've definitely, I've cut the sleeves off of a few shirts having to get out into the woods and make mistakes.
Yeah.
Just end up. It's only bad if you have to go again and then you come back with a midriff out. It's not.
Yeah, I would always there was a couple of times I came home from a ride with one sock, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's cool is you're out in the wilderness. So
Yes. That's probably the biggest thing I like about cycling still. Like, at least with the Highland Games for me, like I competed outdoors and most of my training was outside for throwing. And whenever that ended and I was just trying to figure out going to the gym, which I don't particularly care for.
Yeah.
I need a thing to train for, and I like being outside. So cycling has been a lovely
cool
reintegration into my training.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know if it's chicken or egg with cycling. If cycling made me need to be outside, or if needing to be outside took me to cycling. It's funny because like I actually like gym work. I like the process. I like just seeing progress because I wouldn't go that often. It's just like
sure.
I've got 2 plates. Week 3, I have 3 plates. You know.
Yeah.
Like I really enjoyed that. But as far as like it ticking the boxes, there was a point when I stopped racing where I was supposed to get a job and actually not ride bikes all the time anymore.
Right. Allegedly.
So I went to the gym for a couple months and I was like, this I'm going to do it now. And my body didn't respond to it. And I was pretty grumpy. I guess it didn't normalize.
Oh man. And for me, it's been very strange. I really thought that I would enjoy training for the sake of training without needing the fire. Mm-hmm. But I need carrots to chase. Like that's 100% the way. And also I like training to get better at things. And so the gym has always been to improve performance in something else I'm doing. And so now, I mean, while I still like being strong and I think I've built enough that it's not going to atrophy away into a cyclist figure. It's still fun because I can still improve, leg strength or what have you, that's going to generate more watts. It's just now trying to figure out the endurance side of things, which I've never done.
Right.
I mean, most of the things I've competed in, my part of the performance or competition is less than a second. And then I'm given a number that's feedback.
Right.
Like so there's no time during the actual thing to process it.
Normally like for World Tour, like you don't even go hard. Like your effort doesn't even start until generally my coach would say like, go out, do 3,500 kJs, like that many kilojoules, and then start your intervals. So it'd be like, okay, I'm going to ride zone 2, zone 3, just like you just collect, 4 hours of hard riding. And that's when your workout starts.
Right. Yeah. Man, I notice now that like, I don't know if it's just older or getting more used to it, but like I'll go ride and it's the first half hour, 45 minutes that I'm just like, what are we doing this for? And then I'm finally warm enough.
Yep.
And the heart rate's in a good zone and stays there, that it's very strange to me that's how it works. That like once I kind of get to that spot where I'm sitting 140 beats a minute all the time, like the engine's ready to go.
Yep.
But yeah, out of the gate, like no, I'm just stiff and awful. Yeah, it's like normal. I need 30 minutes, 45 minutes.
Yep. That's how we do it.
Man, any recommendations for people as far as tricks that you've learned that are, some stupid thing that your average cyclist should do that would make an improvement?
I mean, to me, it's just kind of like don't get stuck in here's how you're supposed to ride a bike. Here's the rules. Here's all the uppity bullshit of pro cycling and the tights. There's just like, I think people get there. They're like, okay, how do I do this? What is this? And I'm always just like, go ride a bike. And the rest of it will figure it out. And like, if anybody tells you doing it wrong, tell them to shut up. Like be safe and be careful and have fun. And I think cycling is moving in that direction. The cycling, like, because it was these brands that were selling, at the time, like $5,000 road bikes was the bread and butter of the whole industry.
Yep.
They were really pushing, and I think their market was growing in the dentist crowd, like in the rich white guy crowd. They really pushed like exclusivity and $300 shorts.
Yeah, road biking was this very elite crowd
very
compared to mountain
end.
Biking.
Exactly, and I think it still is. And I it doesn't need to be. And I think we're kind of victims of that exclusivity, and now like we're trying to grow the sport, and people ruined it by making all these rules and making it like, oh, here's how high your socks are supposed to be, and here's you're supposed to shave this and that.
Gross.
So yeah, my answer is anybody who wants to just go keep riding your bike.
Yeah, just ride your bike, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like it's same advice I give for people, who hit me up about like, hey, I'd like to start the gym. What do I do? Mm-hmm. And my advice is like, look, develop the habit of going to the gym first. Like right. That's the first hurdle. Is I just want you to go 4 days a week, do whatever the fuck you want for a month.
Yeah. Yeah. And if it's like, if you're having trouble motivating yourself, then maybe this isn't your thing.
Right. It's exactly right. Like before I want to give you any more input and something else to think about, like that would be my advice for cycling. It's like, that's what I've told myself is like, okay, cool. We're going to do 100 miles a week consistently.
Yeah.
And see how we feel after that. After that, if we can do that consistently and we're looking for more, let's maybe play with a couple interval days. Let's start maybe some thought on training.
Right.
Yeah, all it is. Dude, I so stoked getting to chat with you. Again, I think we're little over an hour here, and next time I'm out in LA, we'll have to do this again. I'll figure out how to bring it. What your factor, the bike?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you still have one with the cutoff bars that's you're just complete lightweight climber?
I have a geeked out, for sure. I have a geeked out setup with the Factor VAM as the frame. I've not taken a saw to it yet, but I will.
I love that.
At some point it comes to that. Yeah.
Well, because if you're climbing, you're never in the drops.
Well, that's the problem. Is that's the idea. But I end up when I go somewhere to go for a KOM, I'm riding for a couple of days beforehand. I'm always just like, well, I sure wish I had. For a year, I traveled with a bike that didn't have drops on it, and I was like, I hate this. You don't realiase how much you use them until you don't have them.
I don't ever use them.
We're looking at 20 grams. So
yeah, right.
It's the last thing I mess with. But it is fun to geek out on that stuff and just like, okay,
dude.
What holes can I drill into my bike to?
Yeah, the derailleurs and everything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, so what is that bike weighing in at? That's all turbo.
I think it's like 12 pounds even now.
It's 2 pounds under the UCI, or is UCI is like 14.9, right?
Yeah, it's 15. You and here's the thing, like you can't sit on that bike.
No, it'd be super bummed.
Right. I might just buckle. Like.
I'm very aware.
A lot of them have like weight limits now. I want to say that my frame, the weight limit's 180.
I mean, of the three choices for bikes of light, fast, and strong, light, cheap, and strong.
Right.
Cheap doesn't get to go in my realm if I want light.
Right.
I need it to be able to support my ass. I think my newest road bike like weighs in at like 17.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's about as nerdy as I've ever built one up.
And I'm sure that's like, it's stiff, it's fast.
Oh, it's great.
Hold you up. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't feel, it doesn't feel twitchy and scary.
Yeah. That's important.
Which is a plus.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, again, yeah. Thanks, man. Anything you want to shout out you got coming up that people can check or find or?
Phil's Cookie Fondo. So this year, because of the pandemic, we're not doing a big event. Last couple of years we had like 1,400 people meet up in Malibu to do that my cookie ride. This year we're doing like a bake your own cookie fondo concept. So we send you cookie mix, we send you some recipes from our celebrity chef team, and I kind of have like ideas for here's the route. So it's sort of like the best we could do is like a curated weekend of fun bike riding. We kind of just give you, tell your friends you're busy or tell your family you're busy, and here's your little bike weekend.
So do you just ride it on your own, kind of around your own?
Yeah, you ride on your own. There's, you upload to Strava and kind of like, here's where you share this. And here's, it's like, it's hard to have anything it's hard to have any goals in cycling right now. It's like it was definitely like in the past, very event focused, the whole sport.
Sure.
Train up for the next race or the next fondo. So we, this is the best we could do, and it's going to be fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I
so
know
it
like
feels
Rebecca
fun.
Rush has done some,
Yeah.
creative stuff like that with her.
She's great too.
Giddy Up as well. I had her on the podcast, I guess, a month ago or so,
Awesome.
whenever we were in Idaho and met up with her.
Okay.
What an animal.
Yeah, she's
It's a
really
whole
special.
different animal, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Just she's legit an adventurer.
Yeah. There's only one of her.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So, dude, yeah, thanks again, man, and let's hook up again soon.
Love it. Yeah, great to know you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it, Phil.
All right.